Good afternoon. This is Math with Mr. Samuels. So once again, if you don't have your notes, you know how everything works. If you don't have your notes, please make sure you have your notes so that you can follow along with the video. Just like usual, you will be responsible for the practice problems at the end. So today we're talking about multi-step equations, and we're focusing on, first of all, focusing on multi-step equations with the variable on one side. So we have some steps that we can follow to help us to follow these rules. So the first thing that we need to do is we're going to distribute if needed. Notice it says if needed, because not all the time will you be required to distribute, but every once in a while there will be a problem or a multi-step equation where it requires us to distribute first. And after we distribute, then we're going to combine like terms. You guys remember, we're combining only like terms. So variables with like variables, and constants with constants. Okay, so then once we combine all of our like terms, we solve the equation and we solve whatever's was remaining. So it's a lot better to show you than to tell you. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, we have 2x minus 8x plus 1 equals 49. So just like always, the first step always is to tee it up. We got to tee it up first. So after we tee it up, we're going to follow our steps. We distribute if needed. Well, if you see and you look in this problem, we don't have any of the distributive property. However, we can combine like terms. So I'm going to put a circle around all my like terms. Okay, and right now we only have 2x and negative 8x can be combined. So what is 2x minus 8x? That leaves us with negative 6x. And we bring down everything else that's left over. So now I just continue to solve my equation just like I would a regular two-step equation. Here's my variable. We want to isolate it. So I need to get rid of what's on the same side of the variable. Well, clearly we're adding a 1. So we need to do the opposite of addition, which is, you are absolutely correct, subtraction. So we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. Remember that golden rule. Whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. Okay? So now 49 minus 1 gives us 48. And then we bring down what's left over, which is negative 6x. So now we have negative 6x equals 48, which clearly we have negative 6 times x. Okay, so we have multiplication. So we have to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which is division. And that's what we do. We divide both sides by negative 6. And now we have to think of our integer rules. A positive divided by a negative is, you're absolutely correct, a negative. So we know that our final answer should be negative 8. But are we done? No, we are not. We always have to check our answer before we progress. So when we substitute in this negative 8 for our equation, we will end up with negative 16 plus 64 plus 1. I'm running out of space. And all of that together should equal 49. Well, let's go ahead and check that. Okay. Negative 16 plus 64 gives us an answer of 48. And then we have 48 plus 1, which is 49. So we get a true statement of 49 equals 49. Sorry, I ran out of space there. But let's go ahead and do another example. Let's do one where we have to distribute at the beginning. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Number 6. Oh, let's do number 8, fraction. Oh, I like fractions. Okay. So let me zoom in for you guys really quickly. All right, let's do number 8. So number 8 has negative 1/2 parentheses 12p minus 42 equals negative 32. So you guys have to remember that when we have fractions, multiplying by 1/2 is the same as dividing by 2. So since this is a negative 1/2, that means we're going to be dividing by negative 2. So we have to first distribute. So let's go ahead and show that distributive property. And we have a negative 1/2 times 12. Well, that's the same thing as 12 divided by negative 2. And a positive divided by negative always equals You're right, a negative. So negative 6p. Okay. And then we have negative 1/2 times negative 42. Well, negative times a negative always equals a positive. So let me go ahead and write my sign down before I do anything. And now we just have to do our operation. Well, multiplying by 1/2 is the same as dividing by 2. So 42 divided by 2 is going to give us 21. And we bring down everything else that's left over. So now we have a normal two-step equation that we can go ahead and progress and solve. We need to locate our variable. Our whole objective is to isolate that variable. Remember, isolate means get it by itself. We want it to be on the one side by itself and nothing else over there. So we have to get rid of this plus 21. Well, how do we get rid of plus 21? What's the inverse operation of addition? Subtraction, absolutely. So we're going to subtract both sides by 21, okay? Now we're back to our integer rules, people. We have a negative minus we have a negative and a negative. They're the same sign. So we add them and keep the sign. So 3 plus 1 is 4. 3 plus 2 is 5. And we keep the sign, negative 54. We bring down what's left over. So now we have negative 6p equals negative 54. And as you all can see, that's multiplication. So we have to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which is, you guessed it, divide. Okay, so now negative 54 divided by negative 6 goes back to our integer rules. You guys see how so important those integer rules are. Those integer rules are going to continue to come up the rest of this school year and the rest of your mathematical career as you progress through high school and college and you go on to higher levels of math. You will notice that those integer rules are our foundation. So that's why they're very important to get those integer rules down. So a negative divided by a negative always equals a positive. And we have negative 54 divided by 6, which is 9. So our final answer ends up being P equals 9. Okay. Now, are we done? No, we are not. We need to go ahead and plug this P back in, which we found out is 9. And we need to make sure that we get a true statement at the end. As you can see, I ran out of room, but I'm going to go ahead and check my answer over here on the side in the section 7 section. So we get negative 1/2, 12 times P. Well, what is 9 times P? 12 times 9 is 108. And then we have minus 42. And all of that should give us an answer of negative 33. Okay. So now, what is 108 minus 42? Well, 108 minus 42 gives us an answer of 66. That leaves us with negative 1/2 times 66. And we know that a positive times a negative equals a negative. And we're just dividing 66 by negative 2. And we end up with negative 33 equals negative 33. And we have a true statement, so we know we are done. Okay. So now, just like usual, you guys are responsible for all the rest of the practice problems. You're going to practice these problems. You're going to complete all of them, have them ready for class tomorrow. And we are going to go over them, make sure we understand everyone, make sure we got them all correct. And we will progress. This has been Math with Mr. Samuels. Have a good evening.